like to call the January 21, 2025 meeting, special meeting of the Rowe Community College Board of Education. And we have 5 members present, so we have a quorum. Rachel, do we have any board member on Zoom?
Not at the moment.
Okay. All right, so we have 5 of us, and today we have maybe a slightly atypical session because we're going to converse with each other as opposed to reading a report. So before we get into that, I'd like us to introduce those of us who are guests. So Juliet.
Juliet Long, Vice President, Student Learning and Success.
Martin Christensen, IT.
Cass Sinclair Road Community College Foundation.
Isam Ahmed, Executive Director, Institutional Effectiveness.
Navarro Chandler, Dean of General Education and Transfer.
Nicole Secreta, Dean of Enrollment Management.
Steve Phelps, Dean of Applied Technology, Visual Arts and Design.
Well, welcome to all of you, and I appreciate the opportunity to share our discussion with you this afternoon. So I was the one who thought that this would be a timely topic following our proposed measure before the communities of Josephine County and Jackson County, and the desire that many of us had to connect with the community. And so I kind of went to it, well, what policies do we have? We meet once a month, but we don't necessarily engage as an official board with various community groups. And the board, by historical precedent, has relied on a board outreach committee. So I'm going to be looking forward and not trying to imagine what was the intent, but I just think that for our purposes this afternoon is to sort of look at the language of what the board committee is charged with. So if you look in your packet, we do have a definition of the board outreach committee to plan and develop interactions between board members and community. And so I was reflecting with Randy earlier that it isn't necessarily the interactions of the board, because we would need 4 or more of us present, right? So it's sort of individuals that decide to reach out potentially if they have, an existing relationship with a certain component of the community. So I wanted to just open the conversation to any successes, things that have gone well, things that we think that we do operate well in this domain or in this example, areas that we might think about as opportunities or maybe changing it up, doing something differently. And as part of that, I thought we can just sort of springboard to begin a conversation. And then I want to invite Randy into the conversation to talk about a connection that he's made that can help us plan events that individual board members it might be the 3 that are on the committee, or it might be somebody on the board that already has an existing relationship with that entity, that organization, that can then come back and report so that it feels like the RCC board or board members are we're a liaison into the community, asking for feedback, getting information like that. So I've just stopped talking, and that's sort of the context for the conversation. Who would like to jump in first?
Yes, for me, I would want to know what's the purpose, like what is the purpose of the outreach committee? What are we trying, what do we want to get out of it? And what would be beneficial to the college versus just.
Exactly. We are, as it were, public officials. So we might benefit as a public official for making those individual connections, but how does the college benefit?
Right.
And how does the board then benefit from the relationships that exist? That's an excellent sort of reframing.
Do you have a thought?
No. I really thought that this would be a time when all of us could participate in brainstorming, whether it's, here's what historically we've done, but I kind of also want to make sure that we're looking through the windscreen, that we're forward-looking and not try to imagine the board that adopted it, what they intended, because we're a new board and
What we want to create.
exactly.
You know, when I first started on the board, I was on the outreach committee and I didn't do very much. I don't think I did one thing, to be honest. But what I got the sense of it was the main focus was to go to make presentations at Rotary and other service clubs. And help to build a connection. And the question I always had for Pat is, and the question I'll pose to all of us is, there's already a lot of PR that's happening at the staff level, at the president level. We have a department that's responsible for this. I know the VPs and the deans do a lot of community connection. There is already a web. And so my question to us is, how do we want to engage with what's already? Because I want it to be, I recommend it to be coordinated with what's already happening. And for the staff and Randy to tell us, here are the things we cannot do and do. So these are all good questions. That's my recommendation is, how do we build on that? Because I know Randy makes presentations at Rotary, so I think we've got Rotary covered. The question is, how do we identify what's missing and what our particular role is? And also, once that's developed, what messages you all want us to deliver, because you don't want us out there just making stuff up.
So I'm hearing, how can we build upon the existing infrastructure that may exist from the college standpoint? And how can we as individual board members assist the college with those messages, with the relationships like that? The only caveat I would say is, what's unique about this is that it's a board committee. That's what's odd. And I don't want to say odd, but that's what's unique about it. And one of the roles of the board is to represent the community. So how can we, what role, maybe that's the question, and how do we define that role nicely so that we're not overstepping and interfering, as it were, right? Others, that's great. Other thoughts?
So maybe it's just me, but there seems to be, for me, a disconnect between, because I'm sure we're all alike and that we have our individual connections and our group connections. I have a disconnect with what I should present about or even say about RCC to people. So kind of what Maria was talking about, like, what is it that do we have talking points or messages? Like during the RCC Foundation, the Build the Bowl, that was easy because there was a message there and I could present that. But what else? I guess I would need specific goals. And then just following up on what you said, Gary, are we bringing things from the community back? So sounds like it goes two ways. And if it's an outreach to the community, maybe we're not really just supposed to push RCC out there, but bring what the community wants RCC us to do from them, get a better picture of what's out there.
Excellent points. Yeah, I'm really sad that Pat isn't here, because Pat has been our champion, as it were. He's been the standard bearer for this college as a board member for a number of years. So I'm sorry that he's going to miss this segment. Roger.
What occurs to me is, in my experience with the board, similar Maria's, is presentations to various groups. But it seems to me that we all have connections within the community, and I'm kind of wondering whether we can't be useful to staff, Randy, et cetera, making connections that we have to, you know, some things that you'd like to do. For instance, if you have something to do with one of the local school districts and you can't seem to be making traction, sometimes we could help that way. Rather than, it seems to me like in the years that I've been on the board, it's been touting our story, you know, to various groups, and that's useful. I like the idea of bringing things back, but I also like to say, okay, is there something that you folks would like to do that we can help with? And we really haven't done much of that I know of, unless, you know, individually we're asked. But I think those are some connections that maybe some of us have that might be useful.
I also agree with what is the message. I know a bunch of it in different community groups, and you know, you wear the different hats, and I know there's meetings I go to that's not appropriate for me to talk as an RCC because they have a strong connection with Randy, and that's not for me to jump in and start having a dialogue there. So yeah, what's the message, and what are we supposed to be representing? But I do like bringing message back, whatever we define that as, also a two-way street on that communication.
What I like is that we actually have a board liaison to the foundation. Foundation is a community partner, and they have a tremendous impact to our students, to our staff, to our community as a whole. We value that relationship so strongly that we actually appoint someone or two people to go there. And maybe how do we build upon that relationship in terms of what other groups might there be that we would have a board member? We couldn't assign one of us to, well, you got Medford City Council every month or every week, but there may be an opportunity for the council to be, you know, on a chart where one of us who lives in the community and may know a counselor may connect with that entity and say, hey, I'm representing the RCC board, or I'm a board member. And I'm here to listen, and sort of things like that. So when I go back to the definition, this committee, by its charter, is supposed to plan and develop interactions between board members. And I know that, at least I haven't, in my 2 years, haven't seen a written plan per se. But Randy, I want to invite you in the conversation because you and I have talked about this, and you may have a potential springboard solution that, or at least it's a solution, or rather a springboard, it's not a solution, that can help us figure out where to go with this.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And definitely I'm open to ideas and feedback from the board. I think one of the things we were looking at, and it's evolved a couple times, even in my growing tenure, is how we address community and government relations. And so Jonah's position and what it was like prior to Jonah, and that was established, you know, it wasn't overly mature even when I arrived. And so with that position being vacant, you know, prior to Jonah leaving, he and I were having conversations around getting more of a pulse in what's going on in our region. We are always interested in what comes out of Salem, but honestly, OCCA does a pretty good job of helping us have a good understanding of what's coming out of Salem. And there are some resources we have that can help us with federal. It's that the regional presence in that's kind of a key thing. So he and I were talking about that. Greener Pastures came along for him. We're excited for him, so he's moved on. But what I'm looking at is the potential of not filling his position and using a known community partner to provide us a regular report on what's going on with key community partners. So looking at like specific cities, the counties. And so we have an understanding of their agendas, what's going on. So if you think of as we do it today, we provide you regular reports from our team. Here's the wonderful thing going on at our college. So you have that understanding, but we also kind of want to do the flip. We want to get, and here's the wonderful things in our community that are happening that might have a direct or an indirect relevance to the college. And so I say that to say, we might be arming you with different and hopefully more useful information in the near future on what's going on in our region to say, oh, I see that this community or this agency is working on this from the report. Is that something that we might have interest in being involved in that conversation in that in some way? And so I think that's something that we could be bringing to the table that can help with outreach. It's kind of hard to say, well, what outreach would we do if we don't know what's going on somewhere else? So hopefully by, if not March, April, we'll be ready to get you kind of a standing report that you would see as part of our monthly board. This, like, so you get both that internal and that external. Here's what's going on in our community. The other two things that are on the docket are collateral materials to have to say, you know, here's a snapshot of our college when we're out and about. And so if you just want to know RCC, not even 101, but you know, nuts and bolts of RCC, past facts, whatever it is, here's a piece to learn more, and with more interest, look here. Along with an annual report to the community. So we did the innovation report. We received a lot of feedback on that. Definitely not something that comprehensive. But part of the feedback we heard, and it was hard to hear, and we just had to embrace it, was during the work with the bond campaigning, was a lot of what I would call key members of our community were like, we just don't know what's going on at your place. We suspect you guys are pretty good, and I've got nothing bad to say. I don't know the level, the extent of what you do. And, you know, I worked here going on 3 years. I don't know the extent of what we do. So there were like, nobody will, but we can do a better job of making the community aware and making ourselves aware. So the flip to that is because we have such a robust and comprehensive mission and outreach, it's hard to come up with the perfect answer. It's situational. So depending on the conversation or what it is, like we're involved in so many of our community conversations. And I'll pause after maybe saying, when I think about the board and outreach, there's a couple key areas. One can be, as we look at campaigns of any sort, the board as elected officials can be given entree in areas that others aren't. So, you know, maybe when we look at if and when we have a different campaign, particularly something that's on the ballot, I think there could be power in an elected official representing the college going to another elected official, making comments at city meetings and just, you know, explaining why we're doing this. I think as an elected official, it's a lot different than an employed official coming and saying, hey, we want your resources. They know what it's, you walk a mile in each other's shoes. I can say, so there's that in a campaign or an advocacy and talking with elected officials. The other thing is, and not that we have a lot of these, you know, we had our bond initiative, but every once in a while, there could be something that's on the ballot that we aren't allowed to take advocacy on, but as elected officials, you would be. So those are the unique attributes to the role. But I think that talking to other agencies in that capacity is where there's probably some opportunity.
Roger.
I've got a question. I remember back a number of years ago, well, let me just ask the question first. Do you feel like you or various components of your staff are getting the information that you need from various components of the workforce development? I remember back, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, there was a growing connection. Each one of us had a relationship with, let's say, the construction part or the nursing part or various people that rely on RCC for, you know, training within their work group. And there was a little start of a little dialogue to say, gee whiz, we would like, this isn't really working for us, but it would be better if we did that. And each of us on the board had an assignment within that workforce, but that kind of went away. And I'm not sure whether it was even useful.
Yeah, I hate to put that onus on the board. You know, I think we continue to make strides, and there's still work to do, but we continue to make strides around about getting into kind of, we call them industry sectors. And some of our sectors are way more organized than our others.
Yeah, some of them were having meetings and whatever, and we
And
would.
so
attend
we
those
have a
meetings.
presence of
Yeah.
standing at those. One of the things as a reminder, we and a couple of years ago, but we reinstituted our leadership position. So Lisa Parks as our dean for workforce.
Mhm.
And so she's got a large presence in some of those. Can speak with a little more consistency, you know, capacity is always a thing. I think it just puts you guys in a really awkward spot to go represent, you know, like with the industry, what we do, what would be will, I mean, just, and so I don't want to set you up in a weird spot there. So I think two things are happening. We've seen the importance of it, so we put resources there and seen gains there. And the industries are getting more organized, and that's helping a lot. But there's, you know, that was my lunch today. My lunch was with workforce partnerships, trying to figure out how do we keep with these sectors and figure out relevance? How do we do gap and out? So it's definitely an issue we're trying to tackle, and we're not. So I'd hate to put you guys in that kind of a spot.
So just to build on what I heard Randy say, to see where we might take it to the next step or how to improve. Maybe it's really around improving the existing plan that we have. So before I do that, I want to be sure I know who the three board members are. So I know it's Jonathan, it's Pat, and I think it's Indra. So if what I heard Randy say is that he may use the resources that were in Jonah's former position and use those resources to have a consultant, if you will, issue some type of report, whether it's, let's say it's a monthly report. And that report could go to the board. And more importantly, to the three board outreach members who then might use that to develop some plan that we could bring back to the table to say, oh, we've got Medford is doing master planning. They're doing master planning. I think, is it the 2040 or 2050? They have a master planning thing going on, and 2040. Yeah. And so is it important for Road Community College to be represented as one of the governors of the college to be part of that planning? Because they may not know of things that are happening that we may know, or we want that scorecard, if you will, that Randy said we could provide. But I feel like we ought to have a seat at that table. And without someone doing that outreach into the community and providing us with a report, the three board members are sort of, I don't know, hamstrung, if you will. I don't know that they have the knowledge of what's happening with various governments, because when we think about it, both Joseph and Jackson County, there's lots of layers of government that overlap or intersect with what the college's mission is in providing education to its community. And in terms of space and facilities and resources, I mean, there's lots of work there. So what I heard you say, Randy, is that potentially, would the board get a report from the consultant?
Yeah, so yeah, there'll be one issue to the college, and we'll share it as part of regular communications with you, whether it's in the, you know, that update or an off-cycle update, and depends when we get it. And so hopefully from there, I think maybe some issues or ideas might surface to say, oh, that, I mean, rather than a forced connection, it's just, oh, here's a natural connection that we need to work with them on.
Randy, your colleagues across the state, do you know of any community college that does this well? That we could learn from them?
Trying to think broader than the state too, but I think of examples in states where they have appointed boards, which tend to be more political appointments where they're connected more politically. You see better examples of it, usually from elected boards. It's kind of the conversations we're having around the table right now. Yeah.
And the reason I'm asking is that I think I think there's a first step in this is in for the college agreeing to what is it that they want to communicate and when and how. And when that step is done, then you can,
Yeah.
you have a web of influence that's already there. There's people you meet with, there's people Juliet meet, and we don't, I think we'd just be interlopers in that. We don't want to like mess with those relationships. But it makes sense when you said, you know, in a peer-to-peer for me to go to this and make a presentation to the council members at the city of Medford, it makes a whole lot of sense from a peer-to-peer, right? That I can go, I don't know, quarterly, hey, here's what's up, right? I think you have 10 minutes to make a presentation, if that much. But that could be our assignment, right? You could assign the city council, Medford City Council to me. And that's on my schedule once a quarter to do that. I mean, if we can get that organized, I think we can be effective without getting in your way. Because I don't think we want to get in your way. We want to help.
It's keeping our role at the legislative role, if you will. We're policymakers. We are a taxing authority. We could put a measure on a ballot. We have high level. And so if people say, well, we didn't know RCC is growing, you mean you're outgrowing your facility? Well, how old are those buildings? And so we happen to know that because we've gone through, you know, a workshop with the staff person that's in charge of a facility. So we understand that. So I want to ask, do you, Jonathan and Indra, I would ask Pat if he were here, find something like that useful to be able to
I
then.
think that is the right way. I know within my zone, I mean, I meet with different elected officials and that is where our power probably is peer to peer. I like them and that's the.
I do have a couple things to add. So what you said earlier was very complicated to me, but are we reaching the people we want to reach? So I have several thoughts here. So I believe in a more grassroots thing. So like we meet with we're covered with business people like the top, but look at the people who come to our college or send their kids there. You know, they're not the Rotarians, I would venture to say it, you know, overall in general. So who are we really wanting to reach? I think we want to reach different people for different reasons. So when it's a fundraising thing, we want to reach this group, or when it's a policy thing, we want to reach this. But when we want to reach voters, we need to reach the general community, not, you know what I mean? So like Pat and I, consultants, I'm not a big fan of. I know they can do really good work and in some circumstances, yes, but the consultant on the bonds, they were way off with their surveys. And so because they didn't, you know, we talked to the people, I think, like the people out there on a grassroots level, one-on-one. So instead of just this formal thing of going and presenting to this meeting or that, I would rather talk one-on-one with the city manager or with so-and-so, because I think you get more information. They can talk more freely when you meet on one-on-one. There's a place for presentations and that's good, but if we really want to see what the community, what's going on in there, we have to find ways to reach into the community. And I feel like that's kind of what we're lacking.
Could I just add to
Of course.
a different perspective?
Mhm.
I feel like in Josephine County, we didn't do that. The board didn't do that. The campaign team didn't do that. There was some purpose in not providing, oh, this would raise taxes $12 on this average size home, and this is what you would get. I feel like that was a missed opportunity, and because we didn't connect, we didn't have the relationship with various groups, and sometimes they're political groups that we might have met with that put out information that was false. for example. So I think that's a missed opportunity. So I agree with you. I just feel like we have to think differently, and I think the consultant, consultants can be super helpful, can provide a framework that we don't have that resource at the college. We don't have that position available. And it could be just a framework that we can build upon because of the connections that we know, that we have, that we could sit in for that. So that's sort of, I'm looking at the glasses half full in that sense.
And you're right, and I agree with some of what you're saying, but also, could we have explained it better? Possibly. But are we really listening to what they're saying too?
That's the other
That's what
half,
I would ask.
is I feel like as a board, we represent the community. And I heard Randy say that you're planning an annual report that would go and drop in every mailbox.
Well,
Well,
yeah, an annual report. We've not, we'll see what that drop in every mailbox means. That may be a pretty high sticker shock, but yes.
It could be a fold out, it could be something that's not a book.
Yeah.
But some document that highlights, like a newspaper that you open it up and it's 4 panels. And you fold it back and it's half of the 8.5 by 11. So to me, that's an important piece of media to explain to the homeowners, hey, this is what the college is doing. Commercials are fabulous. I love the commercials. Especially the early morning with the big logo, the 6 a.m. I'm up early these days. So Randy, you were gonna say something.
I probably was, I don't know.
So it sounds like we could bring something back in a couple of months, unless there's a plan already that you would like to plug us into. If there is one, we will, but it doesn't sound like that. And it sounds like we could use the existing structure and framework and build upon it, potentially, because at some point the college some year is going to throw a bond out there. And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
now you remembered.
I did.
Oh, go ahead.
No, it was in response, I think, to Jonathan's mention of like the peer-to-peer is I think when we determine what this community report to the board, this fast facts, here's your RCC in a nutshell, these fast facts. We can arm you with those, and then the audience specific, here's some relevant stuff. So I think that where there can be value, like I said, if I go talk to somebody, I'm a paid agent of the college. When you go talk to a board as an elected official, you're talking to people in the same seat. So to say, I'm here on behalf of the college, want to let you know we really appreciate the partnership, and I want to highlight these things. And there's tremendous power if you go to Medford School District and you say, I just want to let you know that I'm here to highlight the relationship between our two agencies, and these are the powerful relationships and momentum things I just want to highlight. Thank you for your partnership. Like those are things that it doesn't have to be even more than that. Of course, then sometimes there's a flip side. We have to go to things and say, hey, we know that this is an item of interest for you, and we really want you to think of this other side of the issue and represent. It's always more fun to go celebrate than it is to challenge. But being able to do that definitely on those just standing recognitions, when we think about how do we get the word of the college out, we definitely can help create some of that stuff and make you aware. And so there's a lot difference if you're going to Medford City, as you said, or maybe somebody speaks at Josephine County and just says, here's it, that we feel fortunate to be able to do so much in our community that too many times I sit in a lot of these conversations, and I sit in a lot of them, where the person's like, well, no, we don't get any value out of this relationship. And the other side of the table says, well, here's 5 things we've done for you recently. And they're like, oh, I didn't know that. Well, no, you didn't. And so how we can just improve awareness. We're not going to fix it, but improve awareness, because we will embark upon shortly a strategic plan where we're going to want to make it external. We're going to talk about facilities master planning and more comprehensive, where we want to get the feedback from the community on how can we align our capital supports to meet them. I suspect we will have a conversation sometime down the road about when's the right time to revisit the bond conversation. And it's gonna be a lot easier to get and have those when we've already built those relationships. And that was the thing that I found is that a lot of the operational leaders in our community, I have a good relationship with, not all of them, I wish I had better, but a lot of them. It's others who can influence decisions who don't have those, and the power of elected officials and talk to elected officials and people who watch a meeting with neutrality of a city council or anywhere else in a district, and they were to hear members of their council say, that is really good information. I appreciate that college and its efforts to support, what we're trying to do as a community. Those are powerful statements.
Andrew?
I would just like to suggest that, maybe instead of us presenting, we have touch points, where maybe I ask a question. What do you think about our healthcare program? What healthcare, I've never heard of it. Oh, you haven't heard of it. Here's what it is. So asking questions to provide feedback from them. Have they even heard of it? Do they know about this? Which then provides us with an opportunity to talk to them and explain things about what's going on. So I call those like just touch points here and there with different community members. So just something to think about maybe.
That's a great strategy to enter into the conversation by inviting them to talk first. I think that's a super idea.
And I don't think it's an either or. I think it's all of
Combination of
all of those
strategies.
things. I also want to say that don't think that RCC has a PR issue. I think you're well regarded and respected. But I agree, the complexity of our organization is impossible. We don't know it, I mean, I'll use I statements. I don't know it. And so our community doesn't know it. And so I think that we've got some catch up to do in terms of communicating effectively and, those bite-sized pieces that understand and can understand and integrate and put us out there. We're ready to help. We just want to make sure that it's the right thing, in the right places at the right time, saying the right thing.
I love the idea of the kind of like the RCC on a page, right? Like something that's quick and easy and.
At a glance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think nearly everyone I speak to sees RCC a tremendous asset. So how do we build upon that and grow that? We did have a unfortunate election, and so we're now looking in the rearview mirror. We're looking ahead for what new opportunities lie ahead. Okay, I'm going to move us to the other discussion topic. So there's obviously no action that we're taking. We're just generating ideas and interest. When we met as an executive committee, I asked if we could frame this part of the conversation, which are our agreements. So our team agreements, those that we agree to each other, and agreements that we have to the president, and the president's agreements to the board. So I wanted to anchor the discussion in our policy of board self-evaluation, because I don't know that we've done this before. And in a way, we are doing that. We're evaluating how effective we are through the development of these agreements, holding ourselves accountable to the agreements. But I'm not proposing now that we change the policy, but that the policy, the discussion rather, fits within this context, that we are in some way, as a committee of the whole, not delegating a separate board committee, but as a committee of the whole, we're looking at our performance as a board. So that's the only reason why I asked that we put this here. And potentially looking down the road, there may be an opportunity for any changes or modifications of the policy. So that's not for today. So if you turn to the next page, we, as a board, developed these. All 7 of us were present when we did that. And it was at the August 2023 retreat. And Maria brought these back to us in December, where we acknowledged them. We chose to not put them in policy, but we did want to have them as a sort of guiding principles. So we acknowledged them in December of 23, and then we brought them back to our retreat. And in the retreat, it was suggested, and maybe it was my suggestion, I don't remember, that we reaffirm these or we revisit them to be sure that we're on track, that we still are doing the things that we listed in 1 through 10. So I'll just give you 30 seconds to re-glance at our agreements to each other and to Randy in 1 through 10. There's no intention for anyone to call themselves out to say. So don't-
I was actually wondering if,
Yeah.
Randy
That was
or
coming.
Randy or Rochelle had some input on number 10. How are we doing?
So.
Just, asking for a friend.
So if you then, President, Randy, in his 5 areas of his agreements.
Yeah, definitely welcome any feedback on anything we can do better there.
So the purpose is for us to have questions. If any changes would be made, we would not take action because we can't in a special meeting, but that we would bring these back at the next meeting in terms of old business, that we could affirm them again if we chose to. But I want to just put this in front of everyone. And I feel they have been a good guiding light or lane that helps keep everything moving in a positive direction with each other, and of course, in our relationship with our president, Randy. So any thoughts about these or comments that you might want to make?
Well, fortunately, we all get along really well. And so it's always in conflict that you can say, oh, we're not following this rule, right?
Right.
Or we need clarification of this rule or this agreement. Absence of that, we have to wait until it breaks down, I think.
Right.
No rush.
No, please, not
From us either.
for us either, yeah, not putting that out in the universe, but I guess from my vantage point, I think we adhere to these are solid, and I don't think if there's anything that we can do preventatively. Randy, is there anything that we can do from a prevention?
No, I like you, I sharing today in the meeting I had, how fortunate I feel that we don't deal with some of the issues that are known to happen elsewhere. I think just given this due diligence helps, so even if it's just like an acknowledgement, yeah, oh yeah, this is a reminder, this is what we said we do. Oh yeah, we did say we would respond within 72 hours.
Sorry, Rochelle, we're gonna work on that one.
I do think, we did spend quite a lot of time as a team of 7 coming up with.
This is Kristen Marlowe.
Coming up with these and really, the discussions we had and the reasoning behind why we chose some and the language was really thoughtful. And I think I agree with Maria. it's working because
Mhm.
or we would have to come back to the table and figure out where we missing smart.
But I do think it's useful to bring them to our attention
Mhm.
periodically. I like the fact that, yeah, okay, this is what we agreed to.
Yeah.
Because I've seen some other boards drift away from things that they've agreed to because, you know, you really want to come back and say, okay, here's where we are. I certainly don't see any reason to modify those or anything else. I'm very happy with the way that we get along.
And for staff who are present, we agree that we will contact Randy when we have a question about something that is in your domain. And the reason, unless Randy sometimes will say to us, we'll go directly to so-and-so, and we'll often include you in the email and say, oh, well, they know, yeah, I don't have the time, or you wouldn't say that, but why would
Anything
we?
lost in translation?
Right, it would be easier for me if you would go directly to that person, but at least this way, these are good gates so 7 people are not just going over Randy's head, contacting staff when he really needs to know what questions that we have to help, you know, prepare the reports and so on and so on. So in a sense, I mean, when you look at what the board policy requires of the board was to evaluate our effectiveness, I feel like we're moving in that direction, right? So whatever we do to change this, and I think I understand from Randy that this is not an OCCA required policy. Yeah. It's not there, right there. It's not, yeah, so it is permissive to have the policy. I kind of like it. I think it helps set.
It gives the framework for why we came up with the agreement.
Exactly. Well, I don't have any more on this topic. Does anyone have any final thoughts or ideas to share?
I think I hear you saying that, and we have gone through this whole process a couple of times over the years that I've been on the board where we generated a form and we've all responded to it or whatever. And what I personally found is, particularly with this board, and it doesn't happen with all boards, I think we all know that, it was a waste of time to go through that exercise. I think that's what I'm hearing you say is we're not gonna do that until there's some kind of a feeling like we should. But it's here when we need it. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah. And if something did occur where we did have to engage each other in a potential or emerging conflict, that might change our decision in the future, but at the moment, I feel like we don't necessarily go any further with a pencil tool, right? It's a conversation that we're having together, you know, in a very respectful setting.
I think it'll be important as we move forward and any composition of the board changes over time, come back to the table to say, here's what we said. Last board that or this new composition, maybe still.
I think that that's where we saw the interest is, you know, because there's sometimes turnover, sometimes changes, is that acknowledgement reminders. I think that the intent was to be able to discuss it, but no surprise that there's not much need to change. And then it would be acknowledged as part of next month's meeting. So kind of when you see the running, and it's just, oh yeah, reminder, we visited basically twice a year, our retreat, and then, or, you know, early in the calendar year. And that way, as there's turnover, it's like, it's a standing thing, not like, well, this person came on board, how do we give them the signs of how we act? It's like, well, that's part of our standing process is to visit. You know, one of the things we talked about today, that's not reflected in here, and you say the president agrees to, number one is focus the board's work on policy matters and to assure that administrative reports provide high summary. So we said, focus the board's work on policy matters. And we just talked a lot about the board's work on board outreach and supporting that. And so like, I don't know that necessitates a change here, but that's an example when conversations go that way, we might say it's going far enough. We want to codify that somewhere in the agreement. That's the beauty of just revisiting it.
Well, I think, yeah, the way I see it, Ray, you have focus during the board meetings, you focus our work on policy. This is the board's work, which is a governing piece. And so this is really not your work per se, but it's the board as a legislative body really assessing its own effectiveness and coming up with its own rules of engagement. So I still think that 100%, at least how I read it, how I see it. Okay, hearing any other final thoughts before we adjourn the session?
No, we were pretty brilliant.
You're pretty
The
brilliant. weren't
person
we?
who led us through that
Yes,
must have
yes, you
been.
did. Yes, you did. All right, then, I will adjourn or close the special meeting of the board at 4:51. And we'll reconvene at 5 o'clock.